Hello everyone, and welcome to the 5th episode of Korean Cinema Today. Here in Seoul, this is Pierce Conran, and I'll be talking to you today about what's going on in the world of Korean cinema. Korean Cinema Today is a new podcast from KOBIZ, the online side of the Korean Film Council. To keep up with the latest news, features, and interviews on Korean film, be sure to visit koreanfilm.or.kr, where you can also find our webzine and our newsletter, and of course tune in again to this podcast. Find us as well on social media. We're very active on Twitter, where you can find us at twitter.com/KoreanFilmBiz, that's B-I-Z, or on Facebook you can find us at facebook.com/kobiz.kofic, KOBIZ.KOFIC. To find this podcast again on iTunes, simply search for Korean Cinema Today. This is your host, Pierce Conran. I am a film critic for Twitch Film, an online film website, as well as the editor of modernkoreancinema.com. And I'm also a journalist for KOBIZ, the site I've just outlined just before. So today we have the great pleasure of welcoming Korean film critic Jason Bechervaise into the studio.
Hello. How's it going?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very, very good. It's great to be here.
Great. Thanks very much for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Jason, of course, is a contributor for Screen International, an international film trade journal, as well as a movie critic for TBS EFM, Arirang, and EBS.
That's right.
Great. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about period films. But before we do that, let's have a little look at the current news in Korean film. CJ Entertainment's Butterfly Project has picked two winners for its yearly competition. Jo Sol-yi was selected with his film Yong's Silence, and Choi Jung-yeol was selected for Glory Day. The Butterfly Project is a script competition, an open call for scripts for young filmmakers who wish to make their films. And this initiative began in the Cindy Cinema Digital Seoul Film Festival. But when that festival closed its doors in 2012, the initiative became independent. Yong's Silence takes place in a residential building where all the inhabitants become suspects in a child's murder. Glory Day is about 4 19-year-olds, and it takes place as an event changes their lives while they're on the cusp of adulthood. If chosen to go further, they will currently receive some script training and some script development help, and if they go on further, then CJ will fund them to the tune of 300 million won, which is approximately $290,000. Previous film that of note from this project is Choi Jin-sung's Steel Cold Winter, which premiered at the Busan International Film Festival last October. The Attorney, which is currently doing extremely well at the Korean box office, has secured a U.S. release date. Welgo USA, which was also responsible for bringing New World, Commitment, and A Company Man to American audiences last year, will release the film in 15 cities beginning on February 7th. They're also handling The Suspect, which is currently number 2 at the box office behind The Attorney. A lot of festival picks this year. The year is getting started pretty quickly with festivals. We have Fantasporto, which is the 34th Oporto International Film Festival. Yoon Sang-ho's The Fake will be competing in the main section there, and Rough Play by Shin Yong-sik has been invited to the Directors' Week competition. That will be the international premiere for the film. The Tromsø International Film Festival in Norway has taken Hong Sang-soo's Our Sunhee in the Horizons section, while Mott, another premiere from the Busan International Film Festival, will play at the Dhaka International Film Festival. Last is 4 films will be making the way to Gothenburg International Film Festival in Sweden. Those are Red Family, December, The Fake, and Godsend. Speaking of The Fake, it was picked as the best Korean indie of 2013 by the Association of Korean Independent Film and Video. Of course, the winner last year was Jisoo. The Fake has really been getting a lot of notice recently. What do you think about that, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's one of the best films of 2013. It's a terrific animation. It's quite dark. We've seen that from the director's previous film, The King of Pigs. But I think for me, this film was a further improvement, even actually, in terms of the director's overall way of storytelling. I just thought, in terms of the story, it was incredibly it's full of substance. It was compelling and it was disturbing, but overall a very, very well-rounded, stupendous feature.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you there. A great film, and I'm very glad to see it getting quite an enormous amount of recognition around the world. It's already won 2 awards at festivals, I believe at the Gijon International Film Festival and the Sitges, both in Spain. So looking at casting, we have a new film in the works. I think this sounds quite interesting. Ryu Seung-wan, who of course made The Berlin File last year, will be returning with the film Veteran, which will team him up again with Hwang Jung-min, one of his leads from The Unjust, and it will also feature Yoo Ah-in. This project sounds quite interesting. There's quite a lot of good talent there. Is this something you're excited about?
Oh, definitely. I mean, a Ryu Seung-wan movie, you have to check it out. Great cast here. Hwang Jung-min and Yoo Ah-in, I think, will have great chemistry. And just from the synopsis, it sounds quite interesting. Looking at, if I remember rightly, about a son from a wealthy family and a detective who's after him, and so it's kind of reminiscent, I guess, from The Unjust. So yeah, it sounds very compelling.
Yeah, it sounds really good, and I guess we'll be seeing that perhaps much later this year or even at the beginning of 2015. Now, 2013 ended not so long ago, and of course the final figures have come in, and as we well know at this point, it was the biggest year on record in Korean cinema. Over 213 million tickets were sold, the first time that the industry sold over 200, and a record was also set for Korean films, 127 million tickets sold. Even more remarkable is that out of the top 10 films of the year, 9 of them were Korean. Was this any surprise for you, Jason?
Yeah, I looked at the figures, I think about a week before New Year's Eve, and I was like, can The Attorney make it in that top 10? And I was like, well, it'd be a bit of a stretch. You'd have to have a huge weekend. And in the end, it made it in there. I was quite astonished that there are 9 Korean films in that top 10. I think there are very few film industries in the world that can boast that kind of record for local films.
Yeah, I mean, outside of America, I'd say the only one might be India. I don't think
India,
anyone else can get that kind of dominance. The Attorney really jumped in there. I remember just before New Year's Eve, it was number 11, and then in one day it jumped 4 spots. It got in there right at the end. So again, looking at The Attorney, over the last few weekends, it's been number 1. It had 3 weekends at number 1 now, and each of those over 1 million. Most recently, it had a 1.24 million weekend. It's now over 8. Is it going to make it over 10?
Well, that's the question. Can it make it past that all-important landmark of 10 million admissions? It's looking strong going into, I think it's going to go on to make this weekend 9 million admissions, and so I really do hope it makes 10 million admissions. It's a great film. I've seen it a couple of times now. It's just great being in a theatre with the local audience here watching it, because it just creates so much emotion, and it's just a very, very well-made film. I think politics inevitably have got involved in terms of what the film represents, but the director, Yang Woo-seok, has just made a fantastic film. The court sequences are just remarkable in the way he utilizes space, and the cinematography, and Song Kang-ho's leading performance is just phenomenal.
I absolutely agree with you. It's a great film, and I'm glad to be seeing it doing so well. The Suspect has also been doing quite well. It's over 3 million now. Its success has been perhaps overshadowed by The Attorney, but I think we'll see it go over 4, but maybe not quite as far as 5 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's reminiscent of the box office in August, where we had Snowpiercer also starring, of course, Song Kang-ho and Terror Live. And I was a bit worried that Terror Live might kind of sink because Snowpiercer was such a huge movie. Yet it was able to compete with Snowpiercer and make over 5 million admissions. And so we're seeing a kind of a repeat, I guess, of the box office in August. So it's great to see two local films doing very well. Not just one film, but two local films doing very well.
Yeah, and it's certainly a kind of a testament to how big the industry has become, that the market can support two huge local hits like that at the same time.
Indeed.
But so lots of a good start to Korean films in the new year. This week we'll be discussing period films, one of the big genres in Korean cinema. And we have a lot of period films coming out this year, enormous amount actually, 6 very prominent ones, which we'll discuss a little bit. How do you feel about genre films these days and period films these days in Korean cinema?
Yeah, I have to say the period films we've seen of late have just looked sumptuous. They have great set designs. The cinematography is fantastic. They're just very, very well made films. The Face Reader, of course, and Masquerade, they both performed very well during the Chuseok period. They were both very, very well executed productions. And there's so much attention to detail, I've noticed, that's just quite remarkable. It's just the level of detail there is. And they're always good to watch. They're compelling, they're interesting stories. And of course, Masquerade, The Face Reader, they both performed exceptionally well in the box office. The Grand Heist performed well, as did Frozen Flower. And The King and the Clown, of course, back in 2005, the Lee Jun-ik film, they have a good track record at the box office, although of course not every period film will succeed.
Yeah, it's certainly a huge genre for Korean film, and as you've mentioned in years past, they've turned out hit after hit. Now, of course, period films have been around for a long time in Korean cinema. If I'm not mistaken, the first one was The Story of Chunhyang from 1923. Of course, Chunhyang or Chunhangjong is a very famous folktale in Korea. There have been over 20 film versions of this. I think I've seen a few of those myself, and I believe one of those was one of the first Korean films I saw, which was Im Kwon-taek's version from 2000.
Right, from 2000, yeah.
So there was one interesting. Every few years, there seems to have been a new version of this film or of this tale. And in 1961, there were two. One was by Shin Sang-ok, and one was by Hong Song-gi. And they were competing to be the first Korean CinemaScope film, which is one thing. So again, another landmark there. But from what I recall, Hong Song-gi was the big popular director at that point. And everyone was expecting this film to trounce Shin Sang-ok's film. But then, of course, the opposite happened, and Shin Sang-ok became one of the biggest Korean directors of all time. So there's this a very important story that's just has a big place in Korean cinema history. We've mentioned, of course, Im Kwon-taek's one. A recent version that I quite enjoyed was The Servants.
Yeah, this story just comes up time and time again. It's not just South Korean films, it's North Korean films as well. One of the things I love about Chunhyang, the Im Kwon-taek film, is how he incorporates kind of pansori into the story as well. This form of Korean music with a drum and a singer. And it's a great story that looks at traditional Korean culture in many different forms, and they're always very, very colourful films. Colour just plays a big part in period films, I find, and costume, and that's obviously a big appeal for not just Korean audiences but to international audiences as well.
Absolutely. Some of these big Korean films that are well known to foreign audiences include Lee Jae-young's Untold Scandal, another early film I saw. I believe I saw that at a festival in Ireland. Must have been back in 2004.
Yeah, that film was actually released in the UK. It's one of the first period films that I watched in the Korean period dramas that I watched in the cinema. I remember sitting there, and it's again very sumptuous film, and it just takes you into a different world. And I guess when you're relatively new to Korean cinema and the Korean culture, it's incredibly. It's not just colourful, but there's so much to learn, and I love the Shakespearean kind of language as well, and that's something that comes across in films like The King and the Clown, and all very eloquent, and it's very, very appealing.
Definitely. Now, of course, period films have changed over the years, and one thing I've noticed is that a lot of the older ones are a lot more dry and kind of didactic.
Yeah, the pace, I think, in particular, has increased. The Masquerade and both the Face Reader, for example, and the Grand Heist as well. They're incredibly quick and fast-paced, especially in terms of the music and the thumping, drums that you get, and the soundtrack's another thing that really comes together quite well in these period films. I find it's not just traditional Korean music; there's kind of contemporary tones in there as well. So very interesting.
Yeah, and also with this kind of these dry films were mostly focused on kind of high-class characters in these period films. But now we're seeing much more of a mix, where there's a few royal court dramas, but a lot of films with lower-class characters and kind of a lot of body humor. I mean, you mentioned The Grand Heist. There's a lot of that in that, and we're seeing it more. It's more open, more free, and seems to be kind of this aligning with what's going on in Korean society today. They're trying to make it appealing, I suppose, for larger audiences. So then, some of the other big Korean period films of the last few years. What else has caught your eye in the last 10 years?
The King and the Clown is, I think, a really interesting movie. The homosexual kind of undertones of the film were quite a talking point at the time. It's a very humorous film as well. I mean, Lee Jun-ik is a very entertaining character, and he always brings, I guess, a sense of hope into his films, whether it's a depressing subject or not. And The King and the Clown is just a film full of just vibrance, energy, and it also tackles some important themes as well. The Frozen Flowers is another film that I quite liked. Again, very provocative and wonderfully put together. As I think one of my favourite period dramas, I think, would either be Masquerade or The Face Reader, Han Jae-rim, and Han Jae-rim's movie, which was just a great leading performance by Song Kang-ho, and it's a great ensemble cast with Kim Hye-soo as well, and a number of others.
Yeah, that's been some very strong films. Those were extremely successful. Now, actually, last year, The Face Reader, was it the only period film last year? Strangely, now that we have so many this year. But there was just one last year, and of course it did very well. Now, one thing I love about Korean cinema is the way it's played with genre so much. And so, true to form, with period films, they've managed to kind of draw different genre elements and make these new hybrids. Among those are Blood Rain, which is, again, it's a period film with a bit of kind of a film noir element and this kind of investigative thriller in there. Speaking of investigative thrillers, there's a Detective D.
Detective K.
Sorry, Detective K.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Detective D is the Chinese film, of
but
course.
that's an interesting film because it has these kind of it has a contemporary feel to it. You have that kind of a fish tank in there, if I remember rightly, and it's an interesting aesthetic throughout. This kind of it's a traditional movie, well, in terms of the setting, but they have this kind of contemporary kind of aesthetic that kind of blends into it, which I thought was quite interesting.
Absolutely, and that was very successful. And I guess if we continue down that road, we have Jeonuchi as well. Right. Of course, it's set both in period and present day, and just completely throws it all together. Another very fun hybrid film.
And the face reader as well. I mean, it's a period drama, but I think Han Jae-rim kind of brings a contemporary kind of ambience to it, which I think made it very, very popular for audiences.
Certainly. And however, maybe not every hybrid has been so successful. One film I really didn't like was The Sword of No Name.
I'm with you. That was a disaster.
I mean, they tried to make that as like 300 a little bit. Very, very hyper stylized film.
It's been a while since I saw that film, but if I remember rightly, it starts off okay, but then it kind of falls apart after about 20 minutes.
It's not worth remembering too much, in my opinion. But let's have a look now at this year. We've looked at some of the big period films of the past. This year, it's quite remarkable that we have 6 enormous films, all very big budget period movies. Before listing them out, the first thing that comes to mind is can they all succeed?
Looking at the 6. I to be honest, I can't see them all doing well. But I guess I could be wrong that they could all perform quite well. But I guess it's inevitable that at least one or two won't really hit the heights of perhaps some of the others. I'd like to see them all do well. There's an interesting mix of directors there. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. There's certainly a few that I'm looking out for. I'm looking forward to Roaring Currents, or the Battle of Myeongran by Kim Ha-min and starring Chae Min-sik. That takes place in 1597. And it looks at the famous Admiral Yi Shun-shin. That's one I'm particularly looking forward to. But Memories of the Sword, starring Lee Byung-hun and Jun Do-yeon, it's hard to see that not doing well. So
yeah, they all seem to have quite a lot of potential for success. And I guess if we look at last year, we ended up having 4 North Korean spy thrillers. And who would have thought that they could have all done well? I mean, 3 of them did very well.
Yeah, 3. Well, Commitment didn't do particularly well.
That would be the 4th one. I mean, it didn't do great. So it wasn't an outright failure either. But that was certainly the casualty in that war.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a casualty. So I guess what I'm getting at is if you've got 6 of them, that it's inevitable that at least one of them, or perhaps 2, won't perform as well as the others. But having said that, and we'll be going through them, they all look compelling and definitely worth looking. Yeah, definitely worth checking out.
All right, so let's run down the list here. The first one, of course, is going to be The Huntresses from director Park Jae-hyun. That film will be released. It will be released for Lunar New Year. In fact, it's being released on Lunar New Year's Day, I think.
Yeah, a great time. If there was a perfect time to release this film, I guess the New Year or Seollal is the perfect time to release it. It stars Ha Ji-won, Kang Ye-won, and Son Ga-in. So big names there. And the director is Park Jae-hyun, who's made films such as How to Keep My Love, which is quite different to this movie, The Huntresses. From the trailer that I saw, it looks rather compelling. So, but I guess it does have that kind of was it Charlie's Angels kind of connotations there in terms of what it's trying to get at. It looks like a bit of a Korean spin-off of that.
Definitely. And now I must admit, I'm not particularly familiar with the director. This is his 5th feature. I haven't seen any of his other ones. But it seems compelling, kind of a fun period action comedy. But perhaps not one of the most notable of these period films coming out this year. The next one, this is one I'm quite excited about. This should be coming out during summer. This will be from Showbox. It's directed by Yoon Jong-bin. I'm talking about Kundo, The Age of the Rampant. Yoon Jong-bin, of course, made Nameless Gangster, a very popular gangster film from a few years ago. He also made The Unforgiven, an excellent small drama.
Ha Jung-woo.
Ha
Jung-woo features in
all his films.
All his films, yeah.
That was an excellent film about military service. He was very young when he made it. I believe he's still very young now. He must be in his early 30s.
Yeah, he's a director that's able to tackle, I guess, some different genres here. I guess chief among them, of course, is Nameless Gangster movie that takes place in the 90s. And so I think, given that he has made some different genres, I think tackling a period piece is another genre that he's tackling. But I think he's demonstrated that every film that he makes, he leaves his mark. And I think there's something here that can certainly gather momentum when it gets released. And I think this film could potentially be huge, because it stars Ha Jung-woo, who's recently had a fantastic year with The Terror Live and The Berlin File, and his feature debut as well, Roller Coaster, and I think here, it's box office dynamite. It could perform extremely well.
It could do really well, and of course, he's being paired with Kang Dong-won, a huge name in Korea. This is his first film after returning from his military.
Yeah, it's been a while since he was last.
His last film was Haunters in 2010.
Yeah, wasn't a fan of that.
I thought it was okay. It wasn't great, but he's no stranger to period films. He's in one of my favorite Korean films, Duelist. Now, don't ask me to explain the story of that film, but it's such a beautiful thing to look at.
Ambiguous at best.
Yeah, definitely.
That's Im Young-se for you. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So quite a potent combo in terms of casting there. And yes, Yoon Jung-bin is just he's shown that he's very adept at working in different genres. Nameless Gangster had a lot of great period detail. Here we have a period film much further back, of course, but so I expect the film will look great and it'll probably be very stylish. And so we have this is a bandit film. Ha Jung-woo plays a butcher who joins a group of thieves, and Kang Dong-won will be playing the son of a wealthy nobleman, and his mother is a concubine. He excels in martial arts, but he isn't recognized for his talents. And then he joins the group of thieves, and they look to steal from corrupt figures and give to the poor. So we've got a bit of a Robin Hood thing going on here as well.
Yeah, it sounds very much like Robin Hood, but they always make, generally, I find they're often compelling films, and I think what Korean cinema has demonstrated in the past is it can take kind of old ideas and old stories and make them into kind of Korean films that are tailored towards a local audience.
Absolutely. I mean, look at The Masquerade.
Masquerade's a good example.
Which is kind of the Prince and the Pauper, or you could also Dave, the Kevin Kline film from the 90s. So it's something that's worked for them very well. The next one is a latte film called King's Wrath. This is by director Lee Jae-gyu, who made a film in 2010 called The Influence, which is an interesting film. It wasn't a full film. It was more of an advertisement, actually, I believe. A strange film starring Lee Byung-hun, but it was a very beautiful film.
Right.
So, yeah, kind of a glorified commercial there.
That was online, wasn't it? It was released online.
That's exactly right. I saw it online. And this stars Hyun-bin, also his first role returning after military service. Again, a huge star on both TV.
Huge, particularly amongst the female demographic.
Yeah. So we have this film. It's a king's court drama. He plays a king trying to protect his royal powers while he's in conflict between two groups trying to take him down. So what do you think about this film?
Well, I mean, I'm not particularly familiar with the director, but I guess it could go either way. But Hyun-bin he's such a big name, and I think anything with him in potentially could attract a lot of people. I mean, the story sounds interesting. Not especially original, but I think if it's well executed, if Hyun-bin's joined by a number of other talented actors and actresses, which I'm sure he will be, I think it could be potentially very big.
So, like Kundo, this will be a summer release. And I suppose, given the director's work on The Influence, I guess I'm expecting this to be a fairly stylish, probably a fairly sexy film, if you don't mind my saying so, with Hyun-bin. So yeah, that perhaps has the potential to do quite well. Looking next on the list, we have another film from Lotte, also a summer release, I believe. This is Pirates. from director Lee Seok-hoon, whose last film was Dancing Queen, a very successful film with Hwang Jung-min and Jong-hwa from a few years ago. So this basically sounds like Pirates of the Caribbean, since we're comparing this to previous films.
Yeah, there are kind of connotations or traits of it that sound very kind of Pirates of the Caribbean. It's set in the Joseon Dynasty period, and pirates fight to catch a grey whale which swallowed a royal stamp.
That sounds almost like Moby Dick.
Yeah. The director, Lee Seok-hoon, I mean, I like Dancing Queen. I wasn't so fond of See You After School, which he made in 2006. So, I mean, again, it could go either way, but it does have an interesting cast. Kim Nam-jin and Son Ye-jin, who's a very, very popular Korean actress. But one thing that, like I said earlier, that Korean films often do well is they take used ideas or used formulas and tailor them to local audiences and to scintillating effect. We saw that not just with period films, but with other films. We've seen it with The Thieves, which I think used some ideas from Ocean's 11 or the Ocean series, and A Werewolf Boy as well, which is a kind of mix of ideas from the Twilight films.
Certainly.
And so I think it could be a very interesting period film.
Absolutely. It sounds kind of like a fun kind of period romp. So the next one, this is a very interesting one. Memories of the Sword. This is also Lotte, but this will be released at the very end of the year, I believe. This stars Chun Do-yeon, Lee Byung-hun, and rising star Kim Go-eun. So that's some pretty major casting right there. And this is the 9th feature from Park Kun-sik, whose more famous films include I Wish I Had a Wife and My Mother the Mermaid. Both great films, very, very different from Memories of the Sword. Yeah,
this film, there's a lot going for it. The director, he's done a lot of stuff. He's done features. He's also worked as assistant director on some notable films as well. If I recall him working as assistant director on A Single Spark, the Park Kwang-soo movie. So, very interesting director. My Mother, the Mermaid, that also starred Chun Do-yeon as well. And the chemistry that Chun Do-yeon and Lee Byung-hun have, I think will be amazing in this film.
Yeah, I mean, they were previously, of course, in Harmony with My Memory.
Exactly. So, out of all these films, there are two that I'm especially looking forward to, and this one is one of the two. I mean, the plot sounds a little bit kind of complex, but I think it will be certainly one to check out. We have 3 warriors from the Goryeo dynasty who lead a riot, and due to the portrayal of Dokki, who's played by Lee Byung-hun, Pung Chon, played by Bae Soo-bin, dies, and then Dokki then tries to persuade Solang, played by Chun Do-yeon, to join his side, but she refuses, and she then flees with Pung Chong's sword and his infant daughter. And then the film kind of moves to 18 years later, and the female warrior is now blind, and she trains the young woman to use the sword for revenge. And then meanwhile, Dokki is the most powerful man in the country, so I guess there'll be a lot of blood that will be shed, no doubt.
It sounds very exciting. Great casting, and a fairly big epic film probably in the works, but we'll have to wait a while before we see that.
Do you think it'll be released during the Chuseok period? I know it's got a late 2014.
I think it's going to be even later than that, actually. It might be more of a Christmas release.
Interesting.
But I mean, anything could change between now and then.
Yeah, I mean, there's this. Well, the Chuseok period's got such a good track record for period.
Yeah,
films.
you got to think something is going to get there.
So.
6. One of them will end up being
3 of them
pushed
really
in there.
Yeah. Just one, I think.
Because here's another summer one, the 4th one in the summer. So I'm presuming one of those at least will be pushed back to Chuseok. The last of the 6 is Roaring Currents, previously known as Battle of Myeongrang, which is kind of the Korean title. This is a very, very big, exciting film from Kim Han-min, who of course struck pay dirt with his last film, also a period movie, War of the Arrows. Yeah, great film. Really fun action period movie. So this is a very big naval warfare epic film, very big budget. Choi Min-sik playing a famous naval admiral, and Ri Sung-rong playing alongside him. That's 2 very big veteran names facing off against each other there, with a director who's kind of previously proven that he can really, really handle period film.
Yeah, I was very impressed with War of the Arrows. The pacing of that film is remarkable. It just never slows down and keeps you compelled.
That's terrific.
2 hours, and it's very, very well executed. I was actually on a bus once, and I was going past Gwanghwamun, and I saw Kim An-min sitting on. He had a camera in front of him, and there was a crew around him, and they were shooting something in Gwanghwamun. I was like, "What are they shooting?" I heard he was shooting a period film. Why is he shooting it here? And then I realised that the statue of Admiral Yi Sun-shin is actually in Gwanghwamun.
Oh, really?
So maybe they're going to start off in the present, looking at the statue, and then go back. I don't know, but I did see him shooting something there.
Oh, that sounds nice.
I saw him in his director's chair shooting a scene, I guess.
Maybe that's a bit of insider information there.
Yeah, maybe not. So if that doesn't feature in the film, then
that'll be on the DVD.
Don't blame me, but I did see him shooting something there.
All right. So lots of big films there. We're running out of time. What out of these 6? 2 questions. What do you think will be most likely to succeed?
Oh, well, I think the 2 films that I would say there's 2 films here, like I said earlier, Roaring Currents and Memories of the Sword. Memories of the Sword. I think those 2 are likely to do very well. Roaring Currents, not just because of the director, but we have Chae Min-sik who plays this admiral, and I mean, it's just a perfect casting. He's a phenomenal actor. So I'll be very, very surprised if that didn't do very well. There's a lot going for that film. The synopsis sounds very interesting. It's got a fairly big budget as well. I think close to $10 million, if I remember rightly.
Probably over.
Or even over, yeah. And Memories of the Sword, the casting of Jeon Do-yeon and Lee Byung-hun, of course, struck gold with The Masquerade. And his role in that was fantastic. And so those 2 films for me are the ones to look out for. But that's not to say that the others won't be good. I mean, they could. There's always a film or a dark horse that ends up a film that you don't expect to do well that does well. So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Certainly. Now, I'm quite excited about Kundo, as I've mentioned. I think that has the potential to do very well as well, considering the pedigree of the director and star. So yeah, a lot of big films, and the first one out of the gate anyway is going to be Huntresses, which is coming out on January 29th. Well, that's all the time we have, Jason, so thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And it's been great to talk with you about period movies.
Thank you.
This week, for In Focus on Korean Cinema Today, I want to discuss the new film Mansion 10,000 Spirits. This is the new film from Park Chan-kyung, who is, of course, Park Chan-wook's brother. This is his 3rd film. His previous one was Anyang Paradise City. The film was served as the opening film for the recent DMZ Docs Film Festival. That was its international premiere, or world premiere, sorry, and it's a film about shamanism, which is a subject that has been often featured in Korean films, but I found has been somewhat impenetrable at times. It's hard to know exactly, to get a real grasp on shamanism, and this film really delves into it in a way that I've never seen before. It focuses on a very famous shaman called Kim Gum-hwa, who is sometimes known as Korea's national shaman. And it's essentially a documentary about her life, but it features extensive reconstructions where actresses play her at different stages of her life. Those include Moon So-ri and Kim Se-ron, and another actress in between those. The film is extremely dynamic, and it's really engaging. It's extremely colorful. It's full of incredible percussive sound and music, and it's so immersive that it's hard not to get into it. It doesn't go into too much detail in terms of explaining what shamanism is. Rather, tries to show it to you and let you experience it. And I found it to be a very, very impressive film. Of course, Park Chan-kyung is no stranger to shamanism on screen. He co-directed Night Fishing, which was a Berlinale Short Film Award winner. He directed that with Park Chan-wook, another film that features shamanism. So a very interesting film that hopefully should be making its way out onto the festival circuit very, very soon. So thank you for joining us for this 5th episode of Korean Cinema Today, where we discussed period movies with our guest, Jason Bechervaise. Please be sure to subscribe by visiting koreanfilm.or.kr to listen to us again, or find us on iTunes by searching for Korean Cinema Today. Thank you very much for listening. This is your host, Piers Conran.